Hey everybody, this is Shino, and we are back in my Modded to the Max 2 series. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing good. This video is the mod spotlight video for the From Golden Combs mod for Vintage Story. This mod is by Vintner Noct, and it alters the vanilla game mechanic for raising bees and harvesting beeswax. In this video, I will showcase how to use this mod to your advantage so you can become a master beekeeper in Vintage Story. Beekeeping in Vintage Story can be a rewarding experience, but it can also be a challenging one. The vanilla game mechanic for raising bees and harvesting beeswax can be time-consuming and resource-intensive. However, with the From Golden Combs mod, this process becomes easier and much more efficient. If you're a new player, you'll love how easy it is to get started with this mod. If you're an experienced player, you'll appreciate how it streamlines the process of raising bees and harvesting honey. I'll show you everything you need to know to get started with this mod, from installing it to building your first beehive. So let's get to it. First, you will need to install the mod. The From Golden Combs mod is available on the Vintage Story mod database. It has been updated to the latest versions of the game and can be added to your existing games without impacting world generation. As a matter of precaution, always back up your game before adding any mods. Doing that and having thumbs, well, that basically separates us from the animals. Once you have installed the mod, you can start building the new beehives that it introduces to the game. The From Golden Combs mod adds 2 new beehive constructions to the game. These hive types expand upon the initial skep, adding a second and a third tier of honeycomb production. First, let's cover the brood and honeypot hives. This setup is the second tier of honeycomb production after the vanilla skep. These are easy to craft and can provide you with a steady supply of honeycomb and don't use durability, so they can be used over and over again. Craft each piece with clay forming and firing like with most clay items. Realize that when you're transporting these pieces, the brood pot has to sit in one of your bag slots. The honey pots can go into your individual inventory. They don't stack, but they can go into your regular inventory, but you're gonna have to have a bag slot to move the brood pot around. Place the brood pot into your bee apiary and then transfer a populated skep into the brood pot. Place the honey pot on top of the brood pot. This setup will produce combs about every 6 game days. To harvest, remove the honey pot from the top and harvest the honeycomb with a knife. The honey pot is then ready to be placed back on top and the process repeats. Next, let's see how to build the Langstrath Hive. This hive is the 3rd tier of honeycomb production, and they are expandable for more efficiency and larger outputs over time. I'm going to provide you with step-by-step instructions on how to build it, how to harvest the wax, and how to deal with the line frame durability. The Langstrath Hive is a more advanced beekeeping structure, but it can produce a larger amount of honeycomb cycle after cycle until you do a massed harvest. Now, before you can build the Langstrath Hive, you will need to have a goodly amount of resources available. Resources such as flax, resin, wood, and of course beeswax. It is possible to build most of the hive, of course, and add on as resources are available, but who wants to have a lot of half-started projects laying around their base? I mean, that's just tacky. You'll also need to be into metalsmithing, as you will need to have a hammer and a saw for construction of these pieces. The instructions for the From Golden Combs mod can be found in its own guide section of the in-game handbook. Simply access the handbook by pressing H on your keyboard and look for the Apiculture From Golden Combs header. The TLDR version is this. The Langstrath Hive consists of a base, at least 1 super with line frames inside, and a populated brood box on top. Don't forget, each one of these pieces has to be stored in a bag slot, so if you can't pick one up, check your bags. Start off by making the Langstrath Hive parts by mixing wood planks and wax in a barrel and sealing it up. Since you need 1 wax per board, make sure you have a bunch of wax stored up. You'll also need to get the wax linen started. 1 linen and 1 wax in a barrel will yield 1 wax linen. Which will result in 2 frame liners, which are used in the super. So if you're putting 10 frames in the super, you will need 5 wax and 5 linen for that process. Now, at the minimum, you will need to make 1 base, 2 supers, 1 top, a frame rack, and no more than 10 lined frames. This will make the smallest Langstrath Hive. You construct the hive by crafting and placing down the base in your bee area. Then place the super on the ground and right-click it with an empty hand to open the lid. Place the line frames into the super and right-click with an empty hand to close the lid. You need to activate a bag slot by pressing Control in either 1, 2, 3, 4, and then click on the super to pick it up. Place the super onto the base. Now place the second super on the ground and then craft the top and right click it on the second super. It's important that this super does not have any frames in it and it's of the same material as the top. That means if I make the super out of acacia, then the top needs to be made out of acacia as well. Now take a populated skep and right click it onto the newly constructed brood box. After that, you can pick up the brood box into your bag slot and place it on the top super that is on the base. Later, you can build and add additional supers onto your hive by removing the brood box and adding a new super with line frames onto the stack before replacing the brood box on top. The Langstrath Hive will produce honeycomb on a 6-day cycle, but the number can be changed in the JSON file if you want a faster or slower process cycle. Now, after the cycle ends, a few of the line frames will have honeycomb on them, but the cycle will continue unabated until there are no more available lined frames. To harvest, remove the brood box from the top and remove the super and place it on the ground. Just like before, right-click with an empty hand to open the lid, remove the frames that have comb in them. Place the comb-covered frames into the frame rack and click with a knife to harvest. Each harvest will remove one durability from the line frame. Replace the line frames into the super and put the hive back together again so the process can repeat. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of this mod. On the pro side, using the mod hives eliminates the bee swarms when harvesting. They also save time from having to break and recraft the skeps and reduce resource gathering of clay and reeds to replace the harvested skep. Langstrath hives can be very large and can continue to produce honeycomb cycle after cycle until you do a mass harvest. Well, that means that if a hive with 4 supers of 10 frames each can keep producing and storing honeycomb for somewhere between 90 and 120 in-game days before being full. On the con side, mod hives don't swarm, so make sure you don't lose a wild hive or your breeding skeps. Secondly, each piece needs a backpack slot available during construction, like a populated skep does. This makes building multiple Langstrath hives difficult if attempting all at once. Clay breeding pots are an easy next step, but the Langstrath hives are very expensive to build. For me anyways, by the time I can make a Langstrath hive, I have too much honey and beeswax. So if I build one, it's only going to be for aesthetics. Mod is a mod that I will always try to add to my modded game experience. It affords me the chance to add an additional level of aesthetics to the game and make high yield resource gathering of wax and honey much more enjoyable. If you haven't added the mod to your world, I encourage you to give it a try and make sure to send along some words of thanks to our amazing community of modders. Thanks for watching the From Golden Combs Mod Spotlight. Hope you found this video informative and helpful in your beekeeping journey and vintage story. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all the vintage story content. Also, let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. This is Shino. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.